Sharyl Attkisson, who's in the news now. She's a reporter at CBS, and she's concerned that her computers, both at home and at work, have been compromised. Let's watch.
Cheryl, what was happening with your computer that made you suspicious?
Well, Gail, there were signs of unusual happenings in my home for many months, and that included odd behavior of both my work and my personal computers. One example was the computers began turning themselves on and then back off again during the night. The analysis found very unusual activity buried deep in the computer. The unauthorized party accessed the CBS computer in my home on multiple occasions, and specifically in December, they used sophisticated methods to cover their tracks, meaning they tried to remove the indications of their previous unauthorized activity. And we're not prepared to talk more about the who is and who did this today, but the intruder is considered highly skilled and used very sophisticated methods. Well, when any unauthorized party comes into the home of an American, whether it's a private citizen or a journalist, and searches through their computers, inserting or removing material for whatever their reason is, it's a very serious and disturbing matter. I'm outraged that anyone would do such a thing, and CBS News takes all of this very seriously.
Now look, I don't know her. I don't know anything about her background, okay? And she's fairly composed in that situation. But you have to now contemplate, like, what is this woman thinking at home now? You know, she doesn't just, mention this on CBS News for 3 minutes and then just walks away from it. This is now her life. She is dealing with what are they surveilling? I don't know if she has kids, but I mean, you've got to be contemplating what are the implications for my kids? What are the implications for my career? What are the implications? Am I going to be a subject of some type of prosecution? I mean, this is weighing on her mind, and it's definitely going to determine and get inside of her decision-making process as she tries to report. And this is what is so damaging about it.
Well, look, Michael Hastings, as I said over and over, was deeply agitated, right? And if you were in Sharyl Attkisson's case or in Michael Hastings' case, wouldn't you be deeply agitated?
Of course.
Right?
And this is not something that you can sort of just leave, well, that's just my job, but now I'm going to go about my day.
Right. Except that they're coming with you in the rest of your day.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
Actually, she went on the O'Reilly factor. It's not the place I would have gone, but that's okay. Let's see what she said there.
So I assume the reason they were in the CBS computer is something related to what I was working on. And
which was what? What big stories were you working on?
Well, at the time I was doing Fast and Furious, of course, some green energy debacle sort of stimulus spending stories, and then later on the Benghazi stories.
All right, so they were all not complimentary to the administration. You weren't working on why is Barack Obama so brilliant and Obamacare the best thing in the world.
It's kind of what I do, whichever administration's in office, that's kind of what I do.
I'm not saying you're partisan, but I'm saying that the stuff you were going after, if the information came forth, might hurt the Obama administration. Is that accurate?
True.
You know, I think if we would have watched that clip, I don't know, however many years ago, we would have said, that sounds like crazy talk, right?
Look, we don't know.
Now, I'm not sure what's crazy anymore.
But that's the point, though. Okay, we don't even know who that person is, right? We don't know who was rooting around in there. It could be the government. It could be a rival network. I mean, who knows who it could be? But the point is that now we have created an environment, and this is not something that's being sort of manufactured in people's minds. Like, again, I keep going back to this, because this is so stunning to me. But we had two U.S. senators, who are begging to be able to talk about something that they think the government has basically just gone off the rails in terms of their authority when it comes to the surveillance. We have the National Director of Intelligence lying in open forum to a U.S. senator, lying when he gives him a chance to amend his response afterwards, lying even though he got the question a day in advance. I mean, this is really problematic. This begins to tear at the fabric of our trust in our government. And so that, we look at a clip like that, and now that becomes something that seems far more plausible.
Yeah, and Attkisson says she does know who it is. She hasn't said it yet. In fact, I think that's the next clip.
Yeah, but in order to go after somebody, you've got to have a suspicion. And I assume you have a suspicion. You don't have to tell me. I don't want to get your lawyers mad, but I assume you have a suspicion.
Well, I think I know, but I'm just not prepared to go into that.
So now, to talk about more paranoia and the kind of paranoia that the police state creates. My home was broken into, right? And it was a crazy guy, appeared to be on bath salts. I'm sure that it was nothing, right? But one day I turned to my wife and I was like, what's interesting is he breaks into the house, and he got right by my computer, and then the police come and tackle him by my computer, okay? He got broken into the house when we were up because he was raving and stuff like that. And then he's immediately whisked away and stuff. So nothing happened there. That's crazy, crazy talk, right? But that's the thing. It makes you start thinking like, wait, why did they break into why is my house the only house anywhere near there that got broken into? And why did he go right by the computer? And then, I don't know, it's because he was fucking on bath salts, right? Okay, and he wasn't, it's not part of anything. But it starts you questioning everything. Michael's fiance was killed in Iraq in 2007. He's doing hard stories against the government, against defense contractors, and then your fiance gets killed in Iraq. And you start to wonder, right? And on it goes. And so people think that in the police state and all this stuff that we're talking about here, that there's no downside. We just get extra security.
Right.
I mean, maybe you lose a little bit of privacy, but it never really affects anyone. First of all, it's not true. It does affect people. And second of all, yes, there is a price to be paid.
And people should also know that this builds. I mean, this aggregates. This does not dissipate. We're seeing what we're seeing here with the Obama administration is basically taking what was rogue authority assumed by the Bush administration, and many senators have said, or it's been said that these programs have been given the color of law, and they're saying the color of law because there are statutes here that are being interpreted in secret by the FISA court, we think, that allow them to go beyond what was anticipated and what was in the minds of the senators when they passed this bill. And so when we see how we go from administration to administration where this authority is built upon and it is expanded and it is codified and it becomes normal and it's a new baseline, this is not going to end unless we put a stop to it. I mean, this is why this type of reporting is so important. This is why, regardless of what you think of Snowden in any way, the information that we have now from him becomes so important in terms of saying to the government, there are restrictions here and there are no internal checks and balances, at least in the way that we have always interpreted what checks and balances should be. You cannot say, well, the NSA is actually auditing themselves. And so they're making sure that they're not, that's not sufficient in this instance.
Look at how paranoid, as you were saying all those points, which are so right, I realized, wait a minute, our offices got broken into way back in the day during the Bush administration. On the same exact night, my car was stolen in a different part of town, across town, right? Same night. My house, my office, two totally different places, right? Now I look back at that and go, what was that about, right?
Look, that was the thing, and in many respects, that's what's so disappointing about the Obama administration, because during the Bush administration, back when I was on Air America, Janine Garofalo and I were doing a show. It was a daily conversation. When are we going to get audited? When, what exactly? What are they listening to? What not? And frankly, we were pretty open book, so we didn't really care. But the idea at that time that we would articulate that, most people were like, there's no indication that the Bush administration would stop at any given point. They lied us into a war. The idea of them spying on people or harassing people that they didn't appreciate was not implausible in any way.
Look at what they did with the U.S. Attorney's offices. Look at what they did to Don Siegelman.
Exactly, Don Siegelman, and we saw what they went after certain lawyers who were supporters, of course. And so, what is sad is that we have a similar dynamic with the Obama administration in many respects. And
in fact, Don Siegelman, former governor of Alabama, now back in jail because Obama picked up the prosecution exactly where Karl Rove left it
and
off.
we saw this with whistleblowers. I mean, Thomas Drake was one of the most, I guess, celebrated, if you will, most famous whistleblowers, NSA whistleblowers. He blew the whistle on a program called Trailblazer, which was a huge boondoggle. And he blew the whistle on this because they had a pre-existing program, I think it was called Thin Read, which was far more targeted and, in his mind, far more efficient. He believes that if Trailblazer had not been brought in, prior to 9/11, we may have been able to prevent 9/11. But Trailblazer was an outsourced, contracted program that was basically enriching these private companies. The special investigator for the NSA vindicated his claims. Congress, he went and testified there. Now, no record was kept, but they ended up closing that program down, and still, he was prosecuted under the Espionage Act. The prosecution fell apart, but this happened under the Obama administration. They destroyed his life. They destroyed his life. And there is no rational explanation for them going after him, but for the fact that the national security state has become this sort of self-licking ice cream cone, where the incentive structure there, the idea that this is all about keeping America safe, you have to be incredibly naive to believe that at this point. There are billions and billions and billions of dollars at stake for corporations. There are millions of dollars at stake for guys like Alexander who will go back and forth between these private security companies and the U.S. government. And so, you know, what you're dealing with is you're standing in the way of people making a lot of money.
Bingo. I mean, we've been talking about it all the past 2 weeks, basically, about how Booz Allen has $6 billion, and it's almost all government contracts. You know, McConnell, who used to be the director of national intelligence for Bush, goes to work for Booz Allen. Clapper, who's now the director of national intelligence for Obama, used to work at Booz Allen. Booz Allen owned by Carlyle, majority interest Carlyle Group, right? And it all goes in a circle. And then David Sirota today wrote a good article about this and this new surveillance industrial complex. You know how much of an industry it is every year?
It's tens of billions of dollars.
$56 billion. And when you think about that, what wouldn't people do to maintain $56 billion?